Welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. Discover yourself, break out of mediocrity, and become the mom you've always aspired to be. Here's your host, Kirsten Tyrell.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of the podcast. I'm sitting here with one of my really good friends, Aimee Dial. Aimee and I go way back, but I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. Welcome to the podcast, Aimee.
Hi.
I like to get ahead of myself. I know we're going to cover a lot today, and she's going to tell you some really great stuff about herself, stories. I think you're going to glean a lot of good information from this, especially if you're a mom who deals with any kind of chronic illness, and particularly maybe the one that Aimee has. So that was a good little teaser, right? They're going to keep listening now.
Right. Now you're intrigued, right?
I know. Okay, so tell everybody how many kids you have, their ages.
I have two boys. One's 3.5 and then one's 1.5. I don't believe in, I don't know exactly how many months old my 1.5-year-old is.
You don't go by 22 months?
No, I'm not he's 23 and 3/4 months. I don't even know what that is. So he's about 1.5 years.
Okay.
And there's about 3.5.
And then when he's almost 2, you'll just be like, he's just about 2.
And then
right?
he's 2. And then once it gets 2 years old, he will just be 2 all year.
Yeah.
And then he will be 3 because it's just...
It's complicated.
Because
I agree.
when they're little, it each month does actually make a difference in their phases and their how they grow and what they're experiencing. But once they hit 2 or 3, it's kind of just 2 and 3.
She's 2 3/4.
Right.
Or what's the movie Grown Ups? He's 48 months.
Yeah, he's 48 months. He's what? So he's 4?
He's 4. Okay, great. Let's just go with years. Thank you. No, that could be a controversial topic, right?
Right. It could.
But that's where we stand on it. We're going to go by year markers.
Yes.
After at least the 2-year mark. Okay, so you're mom of 2 pretty young kids. Mm-hmm. And you also... Well, again, we're going to wait just a minute. I want to give people backstory on you and I.
Okay.
Aimee and I have been friends since high school. Did you move to St. George in high school?
Yeah, just before high school. So I went to a semester at the middle school.
Okay.
And then on to high school.
Okay. So we were kind of friends in high school. Mm-hmm. We were kind of in different crowds. I don't know. You did drill team. I was a theater nerd. I mean, it's not like we were friends with a lot of the same people. Uh-huh. We just didn't really hang out a ton.
No, but I was also crazy. I didn't hang out with many people because I moved out by myself when I was 17. So
oh, really?
To high school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I lived on my own when I was 17.
Oh my gosh.
And I was doing high school and drill team and then working as well. So I didn't have a lot of time to hang out.
I actually do vaguely remember that about you.
Yeah.
You were really busy. You were living a different kind of life than the rest of us.
Right.
We were still just high school.
Right. So it was hard because I had to do all the
you had to be your
business.
Mom, your own mom.
Had to be doing all the grown-up business. So
and then we worked together at Lobster. Do you remember that?
Oh my God, yes! I didn't until you said that.
I know.
I totally forgot about that. Oh my God, yes.
That was a short little phase of my life, but I love to tell my kids still that I used to work here. And they're like, did you touch the lobsters? I'm like, I never touched the lobsters. That was beneath my pay grade. I did not touch the lobsters.
I refused to do such a thing.
But that was fun. I remember getting to know you a little bit more then, and that was good. But then even more recently... I remember I was putting out a search for experts or just people who are really knowledgeable in a certain area to be on the podcast. And you were like, I don't know if I'm an expert or anything, but I think this is something that merits a whole episode, which I love. And I'm so glad that we're doing this because we've wanted to do, what is this, 6 months later or something?
Something.
It's been a long time. But I love that because it gave me an insight. I love that we can stay connected through social media, even though most people see it as kind of this negative comparison trap. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, you just see people's highlight reel. You don't know what they're going through or what's going on in their day-to-day life. I don't know how public you are on your Facebook page about your personal stuff.
Right.
I think most of us are pretty surface. So to get to kind of know that, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know a lot of these things about you for sure. But I love that we're going to be able to share that here. So however much you want to share, a little backstory on kind of the chronic illness that you deal with. And we're going to talk about kind of how she's coped with that, being a mom too.
I'm going to go out there and be a little bit vulnerable here and
this is a perfect place to do it.
Talk a little more about it than I probably normally would. Yeah. It's kind of a tough thing to talk about, and you're not sure how it's going to be received by others and if they're really going to understand.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of reached out to you, because I thought I know I'm not the only mom out there that's dealing with something like this, and it's a struggle every single day. It's not just the illness that I have is Lyme disease, but there's so many others who have thyroid problems and heart problems and these chronic things that make every day a struggle. Mm-hmm. And we all know that being a mom is a struggle every day in its own, Yeah. But then you have a whole other thing to add on top of that.
And I remember finding out from somebody else on the podcast who's had a chronic illness. I think it was Jackie Richards. I don't know. She has rheumatoid arthritis, and that's a chronic illness.
Yes, definitely.
She talked about percentages, and there's so many more than you would even imagine. Mm-hmm. When you lump it together in that category of all those things kind of fitting in, there's probably more people that have one than people that don't.
Yeah.
When you say?
I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. And yet we don't really talk about it. There's people like me who I have a thyroid issue. It's not really extreme, mm-hmm. but I didn't really know that now I'm in this category. And I think there's a lot of people who might not realize that.
Probably. Everyone's got some sort of struggle. And and that's why I thought maybe we should talk about that, because we all talk about the general mommy things. You know what I mean? We talk about just the general behavioral issues you're dealing with, or
the sleep deprivation,
or juggling your time and prioritizing and all of that. But do we talk about those days when you literally physically cannot get out of bed? And I'm talking about something separate from sleep deprivation, mm-hmm. Where in my case, you're in so much pain you cannot get up,
Yeah.
And what do you do? What do you do with two little people who can't take care of themselves, and you can't get out of bed? And so then there's that whole other struggle.
And people need to know. I just think it's so cool. I love putting stuff out there like this that I know is going to be out there forever, because there's somebody who might not even be dealing with a chronic illness right now that mm-hmm. will. And it's so nice to hear those. Brené Brown says this, and I've referred to this before, the most powerful words in the English language are me too.
Me too,
so when somebody can relate to your issue, even if it's not the exact same, just to know, okay, I'm not a terrible mother because I can't get out of bed today. There's other moms who are in my same situation. Yeah. And our kids are all still going to turn out fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it's all the people who care a lot. If you do feel like complete crap about it, about what you're doing or what you're not doing, that the fact that you care that much means your kids will turn out great.
That's so true.
Because you're trying that much harder.
Mm-hmm. And you're thinking about it.
You're thinking about it that much harder. You're finding alternatives to still get the job done. You're doing whatever it takes, basically. Yeah. And
which is kind of the epitome of motherhood.
Kind of.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So feel good about that, ladies. Yeah. Whatever. If you feel really, really terrible about it, you are amazing.
You're doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing.
You're a good mom. If you have mom guilt, it means you're a good mom most of the time.
Yeah. And I would say that is the biggest struggle for me, is because there's always mom guilt. Yeah. But then there's mom guilt like that, where it's you actually cannot take care of your kids, mm-hmm. and then man does that feel terrible.
I can't imagine. Well, I know how that feels. I just feel like that. My kids have been asking me to have another baby, and I'm like, so just imagine mom having the flu every single day, and I can't play with you, and I can't cook for you. I can't really even talk to you sometimes because making words makes me sick, Exactly. So, I mean, that would be my closest comparison to probably what your worst day is is being pregnant. Yeah. So, yeah, I totally understand that. So give me a little back history on when you found out you had Lyme disease. Have you had it your whole life, or is this into adulthood?
No, it was into adulthood. I'm not 100% sure when exactly I contracted it. The normal way that people contract it is through a tick bite. Mm-hmm. When the tick bites you, they release their saliva when they bite you, and even when you pull out a tick. So always be careful about pulling them out, because they will release things into your body, and whatever diseases they're carrying will get released into your body. And that's the scariest thing about it. So always be very, very careful about if you do have a tick, how you get it out, because that's a big deal. But there's things out there, there's new research that says there are other ways to contract it. That's all That's all very controversial.
What camp are you in? You think it was from a tick, or do you think that's from some of those other ways?
I mean, I like to be outdoors a lot, and so it could definitely have been from a tick. The trouble is, people think, well, there's no way I could have Lyme disease, or I could have had it, or because I've never been bit by a tick before. But ticks can be as small as the period at the end of a sentence. So think about reading a book and how small a period is at the end of the sentence. Yeah. They can be that small. Tell me you would find that on your body.
Yeah,
you could very easily miss that.
Yeah.
Also,
it's like half of an ant.
Right. I mean, it pretty impossible to spot. Also, the CDC, Lyme disease is such a controversial thing when you really, really delve into it. Yeah. But if you were to just look on the CDC in a generalized way, they would say, oh, you get bit by a tick, and it's this perfect situation where you know you're bit by a tick, and then you get this rash, and then you'll feel a little fluish, and then you get antibiotics and everything's okay. Yeah. But anyone who knows anything knows none of that is true. Yeah. There's a very fine window to catch it. So, for instance, in a perfect situation, you would get bit by a tick. You would find it. You would get the tick tested for any diseases or co-infections. If they came up with it, you would then do a course of antibiotics. And hopefully everything would be okay. It's a very extreme course of antibiotics. It's not like when you get an ear infection. And then you'd hopefully be okay. But if you miss that window, it then turns into chronic Lyme disease. And that's where the germs just set in. And they'll never go away. I'll never not have Lyme disease. They'll always be there. And then they start to kind of attack certain parts of your body. Yeah. And everybody's different. From my experience of people that I've talked to, it's usually like your weakest points in your body, they seem to latch onto. So for me, I have neuro-Lyme, so it affects my brain. It actually eats away your brain.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like for real. And also very much my body. So because I was a dancer in high school, my hips. So when I get really bad, when I have one of those days, it's a lot in my hips, in my joints, in my body. And at my very worst, when I was sick, I couldn't actually walk at all. Wow. And then, the neuro.
Is that before you kind of knew what it was? Or
yeah, well, and that's the thing. So I didn't have all your typical things, and so I didn't catch it. I was sick for many, many years, and I could not get diagnosed. I probably saw 12 plus doctors.
Oh my gosh. It amazes me how hard it is to diagnose something. Like how I don't know. I don't understand it because I've never had to go through that many tests, but you'd think there'd be certain ones that would be kind of the first to test for with certain symptoms, but I know people go to many, many, many places before they ever figure it out. That's so frustrating.
Yeah, well, and it depends on your doctor and what they believe in. I mean, there are doctors here that don't believe Lyme disease even exists.
Oh my gosh.
So they won't test you for it because they're like, nope,
it doesn't exist. It's not even a real thing.
Anyway,
wow.
Yeah. So I went I went a long time without being diagnosed, and the longer you go, the more damage it does to your body.
Oh man.
Yeah, and then maybe once you get a handle of it, you can get to a point of where you can function, but then you'll always deal with that damage. You can't really repair that damage that's been done for however many years you've gone without it being taken care of. But I was diagnosed before I had kids. That was kind of a hard thing because the only way you can pass on Lyme disease is in utero. Oh. But it's not a definite. Yeah. It's not a you for sure will pass it on to your kids. It's just a...
And there's nothing you can take that will prevent that.
Yeah. No. Some Lyme... Some people call themselves Lymies, is what they call themselves.
Hey, if you're going to have to deal with it, I think you should have a catchy name for it.
A Limey.
It's kind of making me crave like some kind of drink with lime in it. I'm not going to lie.
Fresh squeezed
lime.
Sounds
so inappropriate.
So some Limies will take antibiotics throughout their pregnancy, hoping that it'll keep it from passing through the uterine wall and into the placenta and all of that. But there's no guarantees and everything. So anyway, that's the very short run of Lyme disease. I don't want to take up your whole time talking about it because I probably
I'm fascinated though.
I probably could because it's really crazy. So that was actually, I thought long and hard about even having kids because that scared me to death from what I went through. I was just like, I couldn't do that to my kids. And I researched a ton, and I tried to get a handle as much as I could before I decided to have kids or get pregnant. And what I came across was it's a luck of the draw. And I felt like every woman out there has luck of the draw. You know, there are women out there that have zero health problems, health issues, and no history. Yeah. And they have children with illnesses. Some health problems, with some illnesses. It's a luck of the draw. I felt like I was rolling the same dice as anyone else.
Yeah, I like that perspective. And I feel like unless it's like a definite thing where, and even then, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. That could get really controversial. But
that could, but
we won't even go there.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like letting your life be ruled by fear.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not going to let that determine every choice that I make, because you would definitely create a life that was very lonely if you had elected. And this is not to discredit. I mean, if you're listening, you're a mom, so you probably didn't choose to not have children. But I mean, a life that you're always going to feel not in control of, that you didn't be, you weren't able to have faith over fear kind of a thing. And I don't know, like, I think that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I'm not that. I am not that person. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not that person. I'm not going to not get in a car because I'm afraid that I'll get in a car accident. Yeah. I'm not going to not get in a plane because I'm afraid it'll crash. Mm-hmm. I refuse. I absolutely refuse to live that kind of life, because if I'm going to get hit by a car, I'm going to get hit by a car.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt like if worst case scenario, my kids get sick, I will do everything I possibly can to keep them healthy, find cures, find treatments, and give them a good life. But I just felt, I know, and I'm sure it could be controversial. Some people might say I'm selfish, But would you say the same thing of someone who has some family history?
Yeah.
You know, because they say, like, for instance, ovarian cancer, it's very much a genetic thing. So would you say the same thing of a woman who decided to have children
even
with
though her
history?
Mother had it or something.
Yeah, even though her mother had ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
Because it's never a guarantee.
Right.
Nobody really knows. So that's the decision that I made, and my boys seem to be doing just fine.
Yeah.
I just kind of keep an eye out, but they're healthy, they're wild, they're crazy, and
they're not Lymies yet.
Not yet. You know, knock on wood.
Would it have already presented itself in them if they had it?
Not necessarily. No. And that's another thing, is they can lay dormant for quite a while. Sometimes, because there are many people that once they finally get diagnosed and they backtrack and they think. Some people have suspected that they were sick for 20 plus years.
Wow.
I've read a book about a doctor who that was his situation, and after he finally got diagnosed, he really went gung-ho with, Lyme disease and helping people, because he had experienced it firsthand. But he went through medical school, he went through many years of a practice with Lyme disease and didn't even know.
Wow.
So it can lay dormant for a really long time. Some people say stress can bring it out, or
that's another reason to not be stressed out and do yoga.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't let those illnesses spike up.
Yep, and that could go with any illness. I'm sure anyone who has anything chronic, there's a doctor out there that's told them you need to take care of yourself, avoid stress, do whatever you can. Yeah. Because they feed on that,
So what are your coping mechanisms? I mean, you're on medication. Does that help keep it at bay, and it just kind of ebbs and flows with
I'm
good days
actually
and bad
not
days?
on medication.
You're not?
No.
Wow.
No. I'm on thyroid medication.
Oh.
Which Lyme disease does really weird things to your body, and like I said, attacks really weird parts. And where I have a neuro-Lyme, that could be an issue with my thyroid. I was on pain medication for a really long time. I was actually on pain medication through my pregnancies.
Wow. Well, I can't imagine
because I just
if your pain was like in your hips and stuff.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh.
It was no fun. It was no fun. But then the pain medication was no longer really doing anything for me as many pain medications and others do. They get to that point where it's really not doing anything for you. So I got off of that. So I just honestly. Just sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days.
Do you do anything naturopathic? Like, do you do...
Sometimes.
I know we kind of talked a little bit about, like, do you do, like, energy clearing or anything like that? Or...
I don't.
Essential oils or anything?
Sometimes. Kind of.
You're not totally, like, hippie about it, but you implement it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, oh my. I don't pass judgment towards anyone for anything.
No, I love all the hippies.
When I was sick, and I'm a little hippie.
I'm a little hippie, too.
I'm totally a little hippie.
If you have even a little bit of essential oils in your house, I think you're a little bit hippie.
Right? Oh, yeah, and I do all the natural stuff for my kids as much as possible. But, when I was sick, and I had seen every doctor, you wouldn't believe what I did. I went to some people, and I had some weird stuff. I had some people do some weird stuff because I was just desperate for any answer.
You would be.
Any answer possible. I mean, I can't even remember all the weird things I did. I drove to Vegas to see some lady, some psychic, but she was like not just a normal psychic, and I did some weird stuff.
Well, at least you know what you have now.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even that, it's so funny because even though I'm diagnosed, it depends on which one of my doctors you ask. Mm-hmm. One of them would say, I wouldn't say that's in his words, slam dunk diagnosis. Yeah. Another one would say, yeah, for sure. Mm. But
that's so interesting. The world of medicine is mind-boggling.
I know, isn't it?
Yeah.
So mostly my coping mechanisms would just be I don't know. Like, are you talking about
like
as far as being a mom?
Yeah, and just a human that has to deal with like the chronic pain and stuff.
As a mom, I honestly, I would say as a mom, the very hardest thing is the mom guilt that's just times 100, you know? When you have that bad day, and I have my tiny 1-year-old looking up at me, wanting to pick me, wanting me to pick him up, and I just physically cannot. Yeah. It's really, really hard. And he doesn't ask to get picked up because he knows. Right. So what he asks for is a hug. He comes up and goes, "Mommy, hug." And he just looks at you, hug. If you bend down and give him a hug, he will scream at you. Like he wants you to pick him up. But he knows nobody's going to tell him no if he asks for a hug. Yeah. So he's just like, hug. So things like that are really hard. Yeah. The mornings are really hard. So you just kind of got to try and find other ways. And you cannot let the internet make you feel even worse about your life. Or the mommy groups. I mean, I really hope that most of the people out there are a part of really supportive groups like this one. You know, like
this one's amazing.
Marvelous Moms or anything in your community. I really hope you're a part of something that's supportive and not judgmental. Yeah. Because there's so much judgment out there, and it's so hard. And it's hard for everybody, whether you're dealing with a chronic illness or not. But it's really hard in that case because there are things you cannot do. That's just not even an option. Yeah. And you've taken it a step further
because you know the need for that, which I love. Anybody who's heard this podcast knows that I love and admire anybody who sees like a problem or a lacking thing and they fill that somehow. So you just created a Facebook group for people with Lyme disease.
I did.
Which is amazing.
Because I had gone through this for so long but never actually met. And this is hilarious because the people in the group, the people who joined the group have met a lot of people. They've had contacts. I personally, who created the group, have never met a person.
Where have you been? Where have
never
my
met a person
been?
with Lyme disease.
Wow.
Until I created this group. But my doctor, he is diagnosing a lot of people, and he's located here in southern Utah. He's diagnosing a ton of people out of his office with Lyme disease, and there's it's coming out, you know. Mm-hmm. People are struggling with it, and I thought, I guarantee there are so many people right here that have it and have no support. So I created a group on Facebook, just so
you guys could go get Lyme drinks together.
Yeah, right? So we can have...
I'm so inappropriate.
That would be amazing.
It's kind of a funny idea for like a mixer.
A great idea.
I would totally do it. I want to come just to take pictures or something.
Okay, cool. Do it. But yeah, I knew there had to be other people out there. And it's really hard when you feel all alone.
Yeah.
You know, you feel all alone in what you're doing, which is how mom groups started and how, you know, you feel alone in what you're going through.
Right.
But you think there's got to be other people out there who feel the same way or who are struggling with the same thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I created a little support group, and that's growing. And so once we get grown a little bit more, we'll start doing I assume we'll start doing some things. But that's a struggle because all those people are struggling with
exactly. I was going to say, you can't really get together and go on hikes because most of you are dealing with pain issues.
That's exactly right. Oh. And I mean,
just mental and moral support.
Yeah, and it's going to be a struggle to probably even get people in the same room, because there's one gal that's a part of it that can't be in a building older than 5 years because she's so sensitive to any sort of mold spores or anything.
Oh my gosh.
And so she gets really, really sick.
Does she have to move every 5 years then?
In older buildings. This is sort of a newer thing. She just moved down here from Salt Lake, and she's trying to find a place to rent and stuff. And it's proving to be a big struggle for her because
oh my gosh, my life is so easy compared to other people's lives.
She has to, and she has a kid too. Wow. And she can't go into older buildings because it just makes her so sick. There's another gal. It takes away
your ability to function in the real world, which is debilitating.
There's another gal, I think she also has kids. She has, her Lyme affected her heart really, really severely, and she just got out of the ER from a heart attack. She's my age. She's in like 30 something. Oh my gosh. But she's had it for a really, really long time. She's one of them that's had it for 20 something years.
And didn't even know.
There's a gentleman that's a part of it that he doesn't have any kids, but he's dealing with the same struggle that I was dealing with. He's kind of like on the fence about having kids because he's just, I just don't know. Yeah. First of all, I don't know if I can even do it. Yeah. You know, physically. Right. Secondly, you know, he's having a struggle with that, but he has a really bad case of Lyme where like he eats any sort of food that he eats gives him such extreme head pain that he's just throwing up. So it's not actually his stomach. It's his brain. Wow. And he can't eat. So, you know, he's lost 50-something pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he's already a smaller framed person.
Yeah. What's the long-term treatment? Like you said, it's literally eating away at your brain. Uh-huh. So is that just going to continue to we're not talking like chunks are disappearing every day. But what's like what happens as you get older?
Well, there was a gentleman who did some research on it. He was researching the link between Lyme disease, the bacteria, the source bacteria of Lyme disease. He was linking it to Alzheimer's and stuff like that. And he was he was doing a lot of research with the actual bug and stuff like that. And he did find a connection. Wow. Between it. So that's sort of scary for all of us. It's almost like a definite that Alzheimer's, dementia, all those kind of, there's been some connection to ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease for, some people, there's a possible link between that and MS.
That's really fun to think about, especially when you're trying to live your life not in fear mode.
Yeah, right? I'm not going to lie, it is a struggle. It is a struggle not to think about that
I'm sure it is.
Especially with little boys, you know. I don't want to do that to them when I'm older.
Well, I have a friend who was here on the podcast before who has, I can't even remember the illness, but it was diagnosed. Her father, different family members have passed away from it early, like in their 40s, and an aunt in her 30s. And she found out that she has it, and she's had children. She didn't even know she had it until after she had children. It's a 50-50 chance, so there's a chance that at least one of her kids has it. But you would probably love talking to her, and her perspective is so... You would never know that she has this, for sure has this illness that will probably take her earlier than most people. Yeah. And she just lives so fearlessly and lives life to the fullest. She's on my mascara team, actually, so you'll probably meet her. But I think you remind me a lot of that. Like you... Just like how you would never know, just in a general conversation, that that's your future, that's your life. I don't know, there's something to be said about that. Like, we're all dying every day, right? Right. Like, we're all going to face really hard stuff in the future. And even if you've dealt with hard stuff in the past, you're not done dealing with hard stuff. But so if you live your life in focus of that, of like, oh, but what if this happens? Or what if this happens? I don't know. That's not, and then it will happen and you will deal with it just like you've dealt with all the other hard stuff, right?
Right. But so it's going to happen anyway. So you can live your life the way you want to live your life and really enjoy it. And then when something bad happens, which it's always going to happen, something bad will always happen to all of us.
Yeah.
So you can do that, or you can just live in fear the entire time of something bad happening that will something will happen.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna deal with it either way.
Yeah.
So live your life and deal with it when it happens.
Yeah.
Or live in fear
just
your
be debilitated
entire life
anyway.
And be debilitated. And then when something bad happens, you look back and realize that
you could have been living all along anyway. It's
so
kind
true.
of like those self-fulfilling prophecies, those movies where it's like, did that happen because, this is so like nerdy sci-fi, but did that happen because I knew it was going to happen and I made it happen? Or
right?
was it going to happen anyway?
Did I mentally make that happen because I knew it was going to happen?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, you could get deep into it.
We could get real deep into this.
But from every person I have talked to throughout my life, everyone's had something. Everybody has had something happen to them. Everybody has had some sort of struggle.
Yeah.
And
this is yours.
And it's just, and there are some people who struggle a lot more than others.
I know, like not being able to eat anything or not being able to go into a building that's 5 years or older. I mean, and even those things probably pale in comparison to what other people go through all over the world. But
so
it's a good like reminder to be grateful for what we have. And also to not live assuming that we will be untouched by things like that,
But on that same note, though, be kind. I feel like be kind to yourself. That's really the biggest thing, I think, especially being a mom with some sort of chronic illness. Be kind to yourself, ladies, because you could just beat yourself up all day about it, There's some of those days I do, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
But be kind to yourself. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt that even though you may not be doing all the things out there that all the Pinterest moms are doing, or all the things out there that all the blogging mommies are talking about, or any of that, just because you're not doing all that doesn't mean you're not doing what your kids need.
Yeah. Amen.
So just be kind.
And be kind to others because you never know what they're experiencing.
Exactly. So when you see a mom in the grocery store, be kind to her. You don't know what she's done.
Yeah, if she's not picking up her kid, it might be because she physically can't.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually sort of saw a comment somewhere on I don't remember the details about it, but it was something about there was a Bumbo recall or something, and they were just like, well, this wouldn't be an issue if you just would pick up your kid or made some comment like that. And I'm like, yeah, there are some of us who can't pick up our kids.
Yeah.
Like physically cannot pick up their kids,
right. Yep.
And you just do what you got to do. So for instance, mornings are really hard for me. And I've read that this is a thing for most people with Lyme. Mornings are rough. It takes your body a really long time
to get to like an average space.
Yeah, well, and when I get out of bed, I'm limping. I limp out of bed. My feet are like burning, like there's literally like fire needles in my feet, and then my hips hurt so bad that I have a hard time walking. So what I do is I get up and I walk straight to the couch. And my husband is amazing, and so he tries. For the minute that he's there before he goes to work, he tries to get the kids situated. He'll get me a cup of coffee so I can just sit for a second. But toddlers, kids, they're crazy, they're wild. And sometimes if they've been up for a second, they're hungry. And so it's not possible for me to be the mom to jump up and make them a 5-course breakfast.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So my kids eat snacks for the first hour or two of the morning, and then I'll make them breakfast.
Yeah.
It's just, we have like a snack. We have like an actual accessible snack drawer in our cabinet. And it just like you open the cabinet and it rolls out. It's like literally a little tray with size that rolls out.
Nice.
And it's full of pouches and applesauce pouches and granola bars and whatever else. And that's what they do. And they know to just do that.
Right.
So I'll be sitting there and they'll say, oh, I want an applesauce. And they'll run and get an applesauce.
I mean, they're being fed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's really no right or wrong way to do that. Like,
no.
I love that you talked about that because it just calls attention to the fact that we're all doing it differently. I know sometimes I go to my friends' houses and I'm like, oh, I should really be doing that differently.
Right.
That's much cooler than the way that I do it.
Right.
But it's kind of a good thing for people who maybe are in your shoes to hear, you're not a bad mom if you can't jump right up and even get them a bowl of cereal.
Yep.
Like, it's okay. They'll have a really healthy lunch.
Yeah.
And the snacks you choose to buy are probably really healthy. You're not, like, giving them Chips Ahoy for breakfast.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you are. Whatever. You can if you want. They're your kids.
Right. I don't choose to do that because then that makes the rest of my day a nightmare.
Horrible.
If they get sugar right off the bat, you all know what that looks like.
Yeah.
So, but if there's nothing in the house, which that happens, you know, going to the grocery store is rough for this family, you know, and my husband works 2 jobs, so he's gone.
Yeah. There's not really that fallback plan.
No, not even in the evening, you know, a lot of you stay-at-home moms, you know the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock feeling, right? Mm-hmm. Well, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock is when my husband goes back to work. He'll sometimes come home for lunch for a minute in the afternoon, and then he goes back to work until literally he walks in when the kids are getting in bed. And he does that because I can't work, you know. And you just do what you got to do. Yeah. And the same thing for him. I'm sure he beats himself up about it not being around as much as he wants, but we're all just doing what we have to do and what we can do. And we're all doing it different and none of it is wrong.
Yeah. I love that. Perfect sentiment to kind of end on. None of it is wrong.
None of it is wrong.
As long as you're doing the best you can, none of it is wrong.
Yeah. And my mother-in-law told me once, you know, because I've been beating myself up from day one about everything. And she's like, you know, the fact that you feel like complete junk about it means that you're a great mom, you know? Yeah. Because you care that much. Yep. So for all of you that feel really terrible, it's a good thing. And I know it's one of those you roll your eyes and you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, whatever.
But I think that's the biggest thing I want to send out there today is just please be kind to yourself. Just because you're not doing it the same way as your friend or the same way as that one lady on that blog or that one lady on this, just because you're not doing it like that, or just because you're not doing it the way you ideally in a perfect world would want to do it, doesn't mean any of it is wrong. Yeah. Doesn't mean any of it is bad. Doesn't mean you're a bad mom or that your kids are going without or suffering or any of that. Just remember, your kids aren't reading those blogs.
That's so true.
Your kids aren't reading those
Instagram posts.
They're not looking at your Facebook and seeing what all the other moms are doing and what all the other kids are doing. Yep. They're not reading any of that. All they know is you, and that's good enough for them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm so glad you said that. I love you, Aimee.
I love you.
Okay, so I feel like that was like a really good kind of your answer and what makes you a marvelous mom. But if you had to sum that up, what would you say makes you a marvelous mom?
I am trying my absolute hardest. And that I truly love my kids with all of my being. And no matter what, I will do everything I can for them. And that's okay. And that's enough.
I love it. I love you. Again, I love you.
I love you.
Thanks for being here and being brave to share your story. I know it's hard to be vulnerable, but I've always seen firsthand that there's somebody who needed to hear this. And there's somebody who's going to benefit and grow from you sharing your story and your experience. So
I hope so.
It will happen. And I will link to your Facebook group. And I will link, I don't know, anything Aimee. If you guys want to learn more from her, you can reach out to me and I'll connect you with her.
Definitely.
But join the Facebook group if you're dealing with Lyme disease. And then I'm sure there's other ones you could recommend too, just for people with chronic illness who maybe don't have that specific one. So we'll link to those as well in the show notes. And we'll see you on the next episode. Have a marvelous day.
Bye-bye.